Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Idaho Falls Symphony's pre-concert lecture series. I'm Thomas Heuser, I'm your music director, and this is our season finale coming up here. Fanfare and Triumph. What an incredible way to round out this 72nd season. And as always, I am grateful for the opportunity to speak with you a little bit about what's on this program, what is the background and context for this concert, and how everything has been going here at the Idaho Falls Symphony. First of all, I'm grateful for the continued support of all of our sponsors, but especially want to thank our collaborative partners for this program, Bank of Idaho, Idaho Falls Community Hospital, and Marilyn Hartwell, along with the baton sponsor, Lorena Murdoch. So thank you all for your continued support. And this is a substantial partnership with Bank of Idaho and Idaho Falls Community Hospital on this program's evening, the event this evening on April 30th. We're going to be honoring the frontline workers and first responders in Idaho Falls who have given so much over the past few years to the community in every imaginable fashion. We're just so grateful for your dedication to our community, and we hope to be able to honor you at this concert. We hope you'll be able to attend this concert, and our friends at the hospital and the bank have been so gracious in inviting many members of the frontline worker community and first responder community to attend, which makes this concert very special to have that kind of opportunity to acknowledge these incredible heroes and show our appreciation in this way. That's a very special feature of this concert, and actually ties in many ways to the emotions of the time and the emotions that are on this program. And this Fanfare and Triumph program is bringing together many, many factors, and the meat of the program is really the second half, the Symphony No. 4 by Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky, the great Russian master. Now, when we talk about Tchaikovsky, of course, he's one of the most well-known composers of all time, and that's primarily because of his ballet scores. Of course, the Nutcracker, a staple of the Idaho Falls Symphony, but also Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, and many other wonderful fairy tales adapted to the ballet stage. And we love performing Tchaikovsky at the Idaho Falls Symphony because of the richness of the melodies, the wonderful instrumental writing. There's just so much in every one of his pieces to sink your teeth into as a musician. And audiences love the memorable tunes and the way that his music comes across. Now, the Fourth Symphony has a very interesting background, but a little bit about Tchaikovsky. He's born in 1840 in St. Petersburg, Russia. He attends the St. Petersburg Conservatory and is recognized as an incredible talent at an early age. But one of the things that Tchaikovsky needed to contend with in this era was this debate about absolute music versus program music that was raging in the 19th century. Absolute music is the music that does not have any external meaning or programmatic content. But when we talk about programmatic content, that is music that is supposed to refer to something outside of itself. It has a subtitle, it has a program, it has a sort of theme that you're supposed to be able to discern from the music, whereas the concept of absolute music doesn't necessarily have that theme, although it may conjure up various emotions or stories or whatever the music does for the listener. It's not prescribed by the composer. But of course, in Russia, in the late 19th century, there was a group of composers that we refer to as the Mighty Five, or the Mighty Handful, which consisted of Rimsky-Korsakov, Mussorgsky, Borodin, and others, who believed that the music needed to be programmatic in order to appeal to the masses. And they were trying very hard to make those programs distinctly Russian. They wanted the themes to be Russian. They wanted the melodies to refer to Russian folk music and the themes to be rooted in Russian culture. And so Tchaikovsky had to embrace that to a degree while also championing his belief in this more absolute musical concept. And the piece that's very important in this story is his fantasy overture on Romeo and Juliet. one of the great pieces of symphonic programmatic music from the 19th century, written by a young Tchaikovsky whose aim was to impress the Mighty Five with his ability to write this kind of programmatic symphonic score. It was a great success. He wowed the composers in that circle and critics and audiences alike, and it remains one of the most important pieces of symphonic music that we have from Tchaikovsky, and one of the most popular. I would say it's probably programmed by orchestras every single season and the year round. It's wonderful to play, and of course very typical of Tchaikovsky's tuneful style and incredible rhythmic energy. So Tchaikovsky wrote his first three symphonies in a sort of more programmatic vein. They each have thematic titles: the Little Russian, for example, symphony, the Winter theme. All of these themes that you're supposed to have embedded in the music are there in his first three symphonies. But Symphony No. 4 marks a departure from that programmatic emphasis. One of the reasons for that was because Tchaikovsky no longer felt the need to create a financial success from the performances of his symphonies at this time, and it's because of a very special patroness by the name of Nadezhda von Meck. Now, Tchaikovsky in 1877, the year of writing this Fourth Symphony, received a letter from von Meck stating, where she stated her unequivocal love and appreciation for Tchaikovsky the composer. She had heard his music, and she professed that she had fallen in love with him. And this was accompanied by this offer from Nadezhda von Meck that she would be his patroness. She would pay him a handsome annual stipend to continue writing music and to develop his own personal voice in the music. So not a bad deal. The only caveat, the only string attached to this particular offer was that she would continue to do this as long as the two agreed never to meet. Now that's very interesting. Of course, to have a patroness who you never have an opportunity to get to know in person, it appealed very much to Tchaikovsky. He agreed wholeheartedly, and it was good for him because he was not necessarily a social butterfly. He was a sort of introverted personality, and he agreed to this arrangement that they would never meet. Now, again, that didn't mean that they would not get to know each other, and in fact, she became what he considered his best friend, mon meilleur ami, and he dedicated the Fourth Symphony to von Meck, not by name, but to his best friend. And in this dedication, she got one of the greatest symphonies of the 19th century. It's truly one of the greatest symphonies ever written, dedicated to her. Now, they wrote back and forth these incredible series of letters, more than 1,000 letters, I think something like 1,200 letters over the course of a decade or more. And in those letters, Tchaikovsky truly opens up and pours his heart out, which was significant for the composer. He was unable to truly be himself, especially at this period. He was a gay man who was unable to be such in Russian culture at that time. If the public had found out, he was concerned that his career would have been ruined, that it would have been held against him. There was even a program of exiling people who professed to be gay at that time. So he was very concerned for his profession and his livelihood. And as a result, he went to great lengths to conceal his real personality, even going so far as, even in the same year, 1877, as getting married. He got married to one of his students, and the relationship lasted, I believe, 2.5 months, and Tchaikovsky was miserable. Now, they separated, but they never fully divorced, so that Tchaikovsky could keep up the charade of being a straight married man. But they were completely estranged, and meanwhile Tchaikovsky had his letters to von Meck, where he was pouring his heart out, saying how miserable he was with his wife, and they... he had this wonderful opportunity to express himself to von Meck in the letters, both his trials and tribulations, but also the things that were joyful in his life, namely the music and performing and what he loved about her and the opportunity he had to express himself. It's very, very dear, and many sincere comments in these letters. So, 1877, he dedicates this Fourth Symphony to her as the very first offering that he would write under her financial support. Again, dedicated to my best friend. And this piece of music is just extraordinary. It is a monumental symphony, about 40 minutes long, in 4 movements. And what's interesting is that, again, we don't know a lot about Tchaikovsky's storylines for a number of his music, or the psychological components of the music after this period of programmatic music slowed down. But in the case of the Fourth Symphony, we do have some insights into the composer's intentions through these letters. The way that Tchaikovsky described his Fourth Symphony to von Meck was to say that the opening motto that you'll hear right away, do, bo, 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 this is the music of fate. And fate is suppressing Tchaikovsky's happiness. Now, this is, of course, an autobiographical reality for him. He felt that the fate was indeed preventing him from fulfilling his happiness in his life. And so this is truly an expression of his personal state. And the drama and the tension in the first movement of the symphony is palpable. For the musicians, it is a tour de force movement. The rhythms are incredibly complicated. There's a sense of syncopation and tension that overrides and pervades most of the first movement. And this fate motive continues to return and persist and push Tchaikovsky down, and the mood is overall very dark. The symphony is in the very dark key of F minor. So we have this fate pushing down on happiness, not allowing Tchaikovsky to reach fulfillment. And while there is some sweetness in the first movement, the overarching energy is that of darkness and desperation. And that desperation truly continues into the second movement, which begins with this beautiful solo melody in the oboe that is passed to the cellos and later the violas and bassoon, violins. It moves around. Very doleful, very sweet, but also very sad. That's one of the things about these first 2 movements, is that it's always emotionally on edge, where you're not really sure if the composer is smiling through tears or at his most depressed or actually quite upbeat and happy. All the emotions are very, very mixed, as you would expect from someone who was going through this kind of personal struggle. So this second movement, again, very, very beautiful. The harmonies are just stunning. Some of the turns and twists that go through this music. There's a wonderful middle passage that's very folksy. So there's some lightness and some lightheartedness that seems to be coming through the darkness in the second movement. And then, of course, the third movement, Pizzicato Ostinato, a scherzo movement entirely of pizzicato strings. Now, this is the moment where I think Tchaikovsky kind of breaks through, and in his letters to von Meck, he describes this as a kind of a moment of release, assisted by alcohol in the case of Tchaikovsky, but nevertheless a moment of release when he finds a sense of joy and a sense of centeredness and happiness. And that comes through in these delightful pizzicato phrases. To have a movement where the strings put their bows down and play pizzicato all the way through was pretty revolutionary for the time. But the other revolutionary thing is the treatment of the individual woodwind instruments in the third movement. Incredible writing for the flutes, particularly the piccolo flute, who has its entrance in this third movement. So the piccolo flute has had to sit there for 2 long movements and then play some very brilliant writing, which is one of the great excerpts for the piccolo. So exciting, so fantastically written for the different woodwind and brass instruments, and this wonderful feature of the pizzicato strings. So fun to listen to, and it segues right into this ebullient final movement of the Fourth Symphony, one of the most uplifting and exciting pieces of symphonic music there is. Great cymbal crash to get us started, and then just this incredible racing 16th note figure. It's a tour de force for the orchestra. Very technical, very virtuosic, but also very fun. And you get the sense that he is fulfilled, that happiness has been achieved until, of course, the fate motive from the first movement comes crashing back in and the darkness returns. You have these doleful, these sort of sighing gestures as though Tchaikovsky has sort of lost this battle for only a brief moment, though. And then everything picks back up and the energy returns and the movement ends with just a burst of energy. It's unbelievable. And that ends our concert, and it ends our season, and it's such a triumphant way to finish this season, which gives us our triumph title for this concert. It's so exciting. It's so fun to play. The musicians are doing an incredible job. Rehearsals have been going so well. Everyone's just thrilled to be playing Tchaikovsky 4. And in fact, it's the symphony that started my very first season. It was my first symphony after my audition in 2011, I believe. So we're delighted to be revisiting this masterpiece and putting it on. Now, that's not the only piece of uplifting and thrilling music on this program, and it's also not the only piece by a Russian. So we are also performing Prokofiev's first piano concerto, and the piano soloist for this event is James Tyler Mckay. Tyler is the 2020 Young Artist Competition winner at the Idaho Falls Symphony in the junior division. This young man is only 17 years old, but plays a mean piano. He has been winning competitions and scholarships left and right. He has recently been, I don't know how to describe it other than just taking away all the first place medals. And it's so inspiring to work with Tyler because of his humble nature. He doesn't really, I think, appreciate yet just how capable he is. And so he is very much adapting and flexible in his musicianship, but he comes with such an unbelievable technique, courtesy of, I think, the training of our principal pianist, Dr. Stephen Thomas, at the Idaho Falls Symphony. So it's a wonderful opportunity to showcase Tyler and with this incredible first piano concerto of Sergei Prokofiev. Prokofiev was of a different generation than Tchaikovsky. He was born in 1891 and lived well into the 20th century. In fact, his life spans both the First and Second World Wars and all of the tumultuous politics and everything that was happening at that time. But in 1911, at the ripe old age of 20, Prokofiev already had established himself as basically a musical genius. In his younger years, he was writing operas, he was writing works for the piano, he was a star student at the St. Petersburg Conservatory as well. And this piece was kind of a showpiece that he wrote for himself. He was a virtuoso pianist, and he wanted to impress the professors at the conservatory. And so he wrote this piece of music that is beyond technical. Now, one of the things about Prokofiev that we need to keep in mind is he was writing in an era of musical modernism, and he was at the cutting edge of the avant-garde at that point, especially in his younger years. He was fascinated by dissonance and the way that music could create sort of polytonal language, where you have two key areas working side by side simultaneously, where the music is very unsettled and dissonant. And that was exciting. That was something that he was pioneering and really pushing forward, along with other Russian composers like Igor Stravinsky at the beginning of the 20th century. So this is very much in vogue, and he embraced it in this first piano concerto for himself to debut. It's dedicated to the dreaded Terrapin, his piano teacher, who was the master of all things technical, and to write a great virtuosic piano concerto dedicated to this brilliant teacher was both an homage and also sort of out of reputation, sort of trying to tap the reputation of this dreaded teacher into this virtuosic piece of music. The first piano concerto is unique in that it is only one movement, so-called. So the piece lasts about 15 minutes, but there's no break. It's one through composed idea with different sections of different moods. It's a great opening sort of chorale, a big D flat major melody that also returns in the end. And everything in the middle is quite varied. There are different faster sections, an unbelievably ghostly kind of middle section. So much packed into these 15 minutes. But I think Tyler is wonderful in this role because he embodies the youthful energy of the young Prokofiev, the soloist. And I think he really brings out all of the different colors that the piano is capable of in this kind of music. Again, the dissonance, the sort of a cerebral style of Prokofiev is on full display here. And he went on to write so much music. Prokofiev, 7 symphonies, 7 operas, incredible ballets for the same avant-garde Ballet Russe company in Paris. Prokofiev, like other Russians in the 20th century, lived in exile for a period of time during the First World War in the United States and then in Paris and elsewhere. I think Prokofiev is probably one of the most important composers of the 20th century whose music we need to play more. We, of course, know his Peter and the Wolf. We know Romeo and Juliet, and we played his 5th symphony, but there's so much by Prokofiev that we still need to explore, and this is a wonderful opportunity for his first piano concerto this weekend. So the 2 great Russian masters, and it is not lost on me that we're playing music by Russian composers at a time of consternation and really anger at the actions of the current Russian government. And I think that the war in Ukraine is front and center in all of our minds, especially as we're thinking about our first responders, police and fire and medical, the folks in Ukraine who are on the front lines of that tragedy and that battle have our thoughts and prayers. And we're going to be honoring them with the performance of the Ukrainian national anthem on this concert. Prokofiev, coincidentally, was born in the Donetsk region, which is now, of course, part of Ukraine. It's on the front lines of this battle. So I think all of that is very heavy in my mind and the symphony musicians' minds as well. Just the power of this moment and the impact of what we're doing here. And it's also incredible that we have as the overture to this concert, the Fanfare for Democracy by James Stevenson. This is a brand new work written in 2021 by the American composer James Stevenson. It had its premiere at the inaugural ceremony for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in 2021, commissioned by the president's own Marine Band. And so this Marine Band fanfare is incredibly triumphant. It's a celebration of our democratic principles. It's a celebration of America. And what Jim Stevenson has done is given this orchestral arrangement of the fanfare for the brass. The orchestral arrangement this year is being premiered all across the 50 states and the District of Columbia. So 51 orchestras are premiering this Fanfare for Democracy on this season, and the Idaho Falls Symphony is the representative orchestra from Idaho, which is wonderful. We are so glad to be a part of this countrywide commissioning project and to be the representative orchestra for Idaho. I know that lends some excitement. And we were going to play this piece back in September, but our park concert got canceled, so we moved it to this event. And again, I didn't know how impactful this fanfare would be at this time. Of course, none of us could have predicted this horrible war that is ongoing, but I think it's such an incredible opportunity to celebrate democracy in the context of these hard times. The music of the fanfare is so celebratory. It is a true showcase for the brass, which is not surprising given that it was written for this a Marine Band originally. Fanfare motives, lots of very sort of fast articulation, very uplifting, music, and I think it's inspiring to think of the connection that we're making with all of these different orchestras around the country, that we are all unified in the presentation of this Fanfare for Democracy. All of that is on the program this weekend, and the triumph to me of this is, of course, also that the symphony is back at full strength. You know, we have our full complement of brass, the harps, the percussion, all of the woodwinds represented, and a much larger complement of strings than we've had earlier in the pandemic, when, of course, everything was so small and remote and virtual, and we are back. And that, to me, is part of the triumph of this weekend's performances, is just the return to some semblance of normalcy, our full audiences back in person, our first responders hopefully in the hall, and our frontline workers able to receive this recognition from the symphony. It is a night that is going to be historic. It is going to have all of the energy of the symphony orchestra and the best of the Idaho Falls community. So we're looking forward to it. The tickets are still available. Bring your friends and family. I can't stress enough that every single concert of the Idaho Falls Symphony is historic. It doesn't matter what we're playing. We can be playing a pops concert. We can be playing wonderful orchestral music like this. It is always something that will stay with you and that you will remember. And we want that to be something that the entire community comes to appreciate. So bring everyone. You're not going to want to miss this. It is an incredible opportunity for our musicians to represent the Idaho Falls Symphony and for our community to gather around this great art form. I'm so grateful to everyone involved behind the scenes, the Idaho Falls Symphony staff, board of directors. Thank you for an incredible 72nd season. And we are getting ready, folks, to announce the details of our 73rd season. You can look forward to that, with season ticket sales coming online this summer for returning audiences and new audiences alike. It's going to be an incredible season that we're calling Fantasy and Folklore, with a wide variety of music designed to appeal to audiences from all walks of life. So there's a lot to look forward to. These announcements are coming soon, just to give a little bit of a teaser here. So much to look forward to. And again, thank you. I also look forward to next season bringing these pre-concert talks back in person. So we'll continue to have that opportunity to talk about the evening's performances, for me to take your questions live and in person. That, of course, is something that I miss very much. But I'm glad that we've sort of adapted and made these talks available online, because it does give us a chance to connect even so. With that, I will leave you to the concert. Please enjoy Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony, Prokofiev's First Piano Concerto, the Fanfare for Democracy, and thank you again to Idaho Falls Community Hospital and Bank of Idaho for making this event possible. We will see you at the Symphony on Saturday, April 30th at the Civic Center for the Performing Arts in Idaho Falls. On behalf of everyone at the Idaho Falls Symphony, Thomas Heuser here. Thank you so much for a wonderful season, and we will see you at the Symphony.